Something just happened on SmackDown that WWE absolutely did not want you to see, and the way the company reacted tells you everything you need to know about how serious the situation really was. Because, in the middle of what was supposed to be a routine segment, Tiffany Stratton suffered a wardrobe malfunction so sudden and so disruptive that the broadcast was literally cut to black. Not edited later. Not replayed differently. Instantly pulled. And when that happens in modern WWE, in an era of hyper-controlled production, it raises a much bigger question than just, what went wrong? It becomes, why does this keep happening, and what does it mean for her momentum heading into WrestleMania? Now let's break this down carefully because this isn't just about an awkward moment on live television. This is about timing, perception, and positioning inside WWE's evolving women's division. From everything we know, the incident occurred during SmackDown while Stratton was in action, and the situation escalated quickly enough that production had no choice but to cut the international feed entirely. That's a nuclear option in broadcast terms. WWE doesn't just pull the plug unless they absolutely have to. What makes this even more interesting is that most US viewers never saw it. Because during the exact moment the mishap occurred, USA Network had already gone to commercials. That means the primary audience missed it, but international viewers watching via Netflix streams caught the interruption. And in today's digital ecosystem, that's almost worse. Because instead of one unified version of events, you now have fragmented clips, speculation, and secondhand reporting driving the narrative. And here's where things get complicated for Stratton. This isn't an isolated incident. This is not a one-time fluke. Reports and fan discussions have already pointed out that she's had similar wardrobe-related issues in the past. And when something like this happens repeatedly, whether it's fair or not, it starts to shape how both fans and management perceive you. Because in professional wrestling, especially at WWE's level, presentation is everything. Every detail is scrutinized. Gear, timing, execution, composure under pressure, it all feeds into whether a performer is seen as reliable in high-stakes moments. And right now, whether it's her fault or not, Stratton is entering a dangerous territory where these incidents risk overshadowing her actual in-ring ability. Let's not forget, this is someone who is positioned as a rising star. A future cornerstone of the women's division. There was a time not too long ago when WWE seemed fully invested in building her as a premium attraction. The confidence was there. The presentation was polished. The trajectory looked clear, but momentum in WWE is a fragile thing. You don't just lose it gradually, you lose it in moments. One bad segment, one mistimed storyline. One incident that shifts the conversation away from your strengths and onto something else entirely. And unfortunately for Stratton, that's exactly what's happening right now. Because this wardrobe malfunction didn't just disrupt a match. It disrupted the narrative around her. Instead of fans talking about her performance, her character, or her WrestleMania direction, the conversation instantly pivoted to the incident itself. And in wrestling, perception often matters more than reality. Now layer on top of that what happened next. She lost the match. That's the kind of 1-2 punch that can quietly derail a push. First, an embarrassing or chaotic moment that breaks immersion. Then, a clean loss that reinforces the idea that things aren't going your way. Whether intentional or coincidental, that combination sends a message. And the message right now is that Stratton is losing momentum at the worst possible time, because WrestleMania isn't just another show, it's the show. It's where stars are made, cemented, or, sometimes, quietly repositioned. And heading into that stage, you want everything aligned. You want confidence, consistency, and a clear narrative behind you. Instead, Stratton is heading into WrestleMania with questions. Meanwhile, on the other side of this equation, you have Giulia, and her trajectory couldn't be more different right now. Because while Stratton is dealing with setbacks, Giulia is gaining momentum, and not just slowly, not subtly. She's surging. Pinning a former women's champion is not just a win, it's a statement. It tells the audience, this is someone you need to pay attention to. And WWE is very deliberate with those kinds of moments. They don't just hand out wins like that casually. When someone gets a victory of that magnitude, it usually means plans are shifting, priorities are being adjusted, and the company is testing how far they can push that performer with the audience. So now you have a contrast. On one side, a performer dealing with repeated mishaps, a recent loss, and declining momentum. On the other, a rising star building credibility, gaining crowd support, and stacking meaningful victories. That contrast is not accidental. It's storytelling, whether it was planned this way or not. But here's the deeper question we need to ask. How much of this is actually hurting Stratton long-term? Because wrestling history is full of moments like this. Moments where something goes wrong live on air. Moments that could have derailed a career, but didn't. In fact, some performers have used these situations to their advantage. They've leaned into the chaos, turned it into character development, used it to show resilience and adaptability. The difference comes down to response. What does Stratton do next? Does she acknowledge it indirectly through her character? Does WWE pivot her presentation? Do they protect her more in upcoming segments, or do they test her further to see how she handles pressure? Because make no mistake, this is a test. WWE may not say it publicly, but internally, moments like this are evaluated closely. Not just the incident itself, but the aftermath. How the performer reacts, how the audience responds, whether it affects ratings, engagement, or storyline investment. And right now, Stratton is at a crossroads. She can either recover and re-establish herself quickly, or risk being overshadowed in a division that is becoming more competitive by the week. And that's the bigger story here. Because the women's division in WWE is no longer a static environment where a few names dominate indefinitely. It's evolving, new talent is emerging, international stars are gaining traction, and the margin for error is shrinking. Which brings us back to WrestleMania. If Stratton goes into that event without momentum, without a clear narrative, and without regained confidence, it's going to be very difficult for her to stand out. And in a show where every moment is designed to be memorable, being overlooked is sometimes worse than losing. But here's the opportunity. Because wrestling also thrives on redemption arcs. If WWE chooses to lean into this, if they reposition Stratton as someone who has faced setbacks but is fighting to regain control, they can turn this entire situation into a compelling storyline. The question is whether they will. Because right now, the optics are not in her favor. A wardrobe malfunction that forced a broadcast blackout, a loss immediately afterward, a pattern of similar incidents in the past, and a rising competitor gaining momentum at the same time. That's not just bad luck. That's a narrative shift, but narratives can change. And if there's one thing WWE has proven time and time again, it's that they can pivot quickly when needed. The key is whether they still see Stratton as a priority worth investing in at that level. Because if they do, you'll see the course correction soon. Stronger booking, cleaner performances, a more controlled presentation. If they don't, then this might be the moment we look back on as the turning point where her trajectory started to change. Either way, what happened on SmackDown was not just a minor incident. It was a moment that exposed how quickly things can shift in WWE and how unforgiving the spotlight can be when something goes wrong. And now, all eyes are on what happens next. Because in this business, it's not about whether you fall. It's about how you recover when the entire world is watching. This has been a Suplex Saga exclusive. I'm Alex, and I'll see you in the next one.